Good evening. I am Becky Sobelman-Stern, the Chief Program Officer at the Jewish Federation of Greater Los Angeles. I'm honored to be your host for this evening's webinar, Fighting Antisemitism Together. Our President and CEO, Noah Farkas, is here, and we thank him for his tireless efforts as an effective spokesperson for our community, especially over these past few weeks. On an average day, we know that our Judaism can't be solely in response to anti-Semites. And each day at the Jewish Federation, we fight for the Jewish future. We care for each other, we educate our Jewish youngsters, and we build a flourishing Jewish community. Also, on an average day, we celebrate our differences and the city of LA, which is so beautifully unique. But today, and in the weeks and months to come, we must work together. We must work with our elected officials, with law enforcement, with our clergy community, and with other organizations like our co-hosts tonight, the Anti-Defamation League. We do this together to respond to our enemies, which are growing in numbers and who are intensifying their approach. Their content is becoming more hateful, and we know that hate speech against Jews often leads to hateful actions and violence against Jews as well as others. So tonight, we convene again to discuss this important topic. This conversation is off the record and is closed to the press. We recognize that we are stronger than we are apart. Together we can heal, we will be vigilant, and we will act, and we will respond. Each of us in this room, the over 1,200 people on our webinar, and each of us at the dais has a unique role to play, and tonight we have an esteemed panel. So let me introduce our first panelist. Rabbi Chernow is the senior rabbi of Temple Israel of Hollywood. Her rabbinic passions include the Jewish healing movement and the power of vibrant worship. So we now turn to Rabbi Chernow for words of contemplation and perhaps consolation.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the Jewish Federation and ADL for putting this together. It's an honor to be on this panel with such esteemed guests. Goodness, so many emotions at this time, so many reactions. We find ourselves holding so much, sometimes two opposite feelings at the very same moment. We don't want to be naive, and we don't want to be alarmist. We don't want to make our world seem better than it is, and we don't want to make it seem worse. We feel profoundly grateful to live in a country that affords rights and protections to Jews that we have rarely known throughout history. And at the same time, we feel horrified and shocked at what we are hearing and seeing in the United States of America in 2022. The slurs, the banners, the flyers, the spewing of prejudice and anti-Semitism. On one hand, we feel frightened that powerful people who shape thought in our culture are bringing to the public discourse anti-Semitic tropes that have a direct path to violence. And at the same time, we feel grateful for the influential voices who ran. They did not walk, they ran to denounce those tropes. Among the first was our own Mayor Garcetti. We thank you very much for that. On the one hand, we know that it is our critical responsibility to take even a hint of anti-Semitism seriously. At the same instant, we have no desire to give celebrity seeking attention and 7 people standing on a bridge our oxygen. We feel a compassionate desire to educate people and understand why fear and prejudice take root. And at the same time, we feel outraged and entitled to righteous indignation. We acknowledge the progress we are making as a human community. There are days where diversity is celebrated and change is palpable. And at the same time, we feel crushed that we sometimes take one step forward and 2 steps back. We feel that it's about time for the world, the larger world, to notice the plight of the Jewish people and the ways we have suffered. We are also clear that this cannot be just about us. We know that anti-Semitism is closely tied to white supremacy, but even if it weren't, every injustice has to be our problem, every inequality our concern. And we cannot take on only those who injure, offend, and oppress. We also have to take on their enablers and supporters. We Jews are well acquainted with paradox and conflicting emotions. We love a set of midrashim that tell opposite stories and yet are both equally true. We know what it feels like to mourn and dance in the very same moment. So here we are today, strong and also vulnerable, a tiny little people with a giant footprint, angry and comforted, deflated and always hopeful. This moment calls on us to take a deep breath, to respond thoughtfully and thoroughly. It calls on us to deepen our relationship with our allies and assure them that we will have their backs as well. It calls on us to recognize prejudice and name it for what it is, bullying. It calls us to know that we are bigger than this and we are better than this. And together, we're gonna be just fine. Ken Yehi Ratzon.
And in some places we say, Yasher Koach. Thank you. Ever since he began his first term as mayor of LA, Eric Garcetti has been a healing influence for our Jewish community, and we are so deeply grateful and thankful. He consistently is uniting us to end anti-Semitism, and we so deeply appreciate, Mayor Garcetti, that you made the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Noah and Becky. Thank you, Rabbi, for your words, and to my fellow panelists, and mostly thank you for everybody who is here, our Los Angeles police officers who are here. You can sit if you want, but you look great against the wall. To all of the folks that are here and those who are following us tonight. There's no more critical place to be and no more important conversation to have than this one, right here and right now. It's a very painful moment for us as a city and for those of us who are Jewish as Jews. On the way here, I was thinking about 4 years ago, almost to the date, 1 week earlier, what it felt like as the first elected Jewish mayor of this city to go in a spontaneous gathering in front of the federal building after we woke up that painful weekend morning and saw our community being shot at and killed, singled out after the Tree of Life shooting. And I remember the words that came to me that evening when I talked about growing up as a Jew, where we read about anti-Semitism and violence almost as a historic chapter, not as a present paragraph. And kind of the shock that I felt that so many of us as American Jews living in a city like Los Angeles that for a long time has felt pretty darn safe, that reawakening that generation after generation after generation of Jews feels when we realize that hate and anti-Semitism never goes away. It crawls under rocks until it gets coaxed out again. But I also remember talking that night to our allies, because it wasn't just Jews that were there. And the next night, being at Wilshire Boulevard Temple where we gathered, and seeing our Sikh brothers and sisters, and Muslim brothers and sisters, and Catholic and Protestant brothers and sisters, Baha'i, every faith, atheists who came forward, our African-American friends who we've stood by. When after 9/11, Islamophobia singled people out who were Muslim or looked Muslim to people. Our Sikh friends when they were killed in Wisconsin. When we saw African-American churches be firebombed again decades after the civil rights struggle, and even worse, shooters, just as we had experienced, single out Black Americans for death simply because of who they were and how they worshiped. And now this onslaught, now, at this moment, provocateurs throwing things in our front yards and on our overpasses, celebrities, singers, basketball players, not just reviving tropes, but pointing people to further research down rabbit holes of untruths, of places that are never easier to find. The work that makes our connection better and quicker is also the same thing that can oppress us by people finding untruths as quickly as you can find information that is truthful. My friend James Gray, whose movie, if I can make a movie pitch, it's at Los Angeles after all, Armageddon Time is coming out shortly, a great story about growing up as a Jewish New Yorker in Queens in the 1980s, showed me recently, I think it was 2 days ago, a billboard on a bus stop here in which the characters who are Jewish all had Hitler mustaches painted onto their faces in a bus stop here in Los Angeles. The quantity and the terrible quality of what we're seeing in anti-Semitism is coming so quickly we don't know exactly how to react. When it happens every so often, it's much easier to take a breath, to come together, to speak out clearly, to show the strength of this city and our coalition, and to hope that that hate goes back under a rock. But right now, we're running from boulder to boulder, from rock to rock, and everything we do to shove it back one place only makes it seem like it's popping up somewhere else too quickly. Somebody called it hate porn the other day, that exactly as the rabbi said, we want to not give oxygen to this. If I knew the number of Jews and Jewish and friends of Jews who reposted with the picture of what was draped over the 405, we all wrestle with, is that the right decision? I respected and loved those who blacked it out, to acknowledge that it happened, but not to repeat the image so we wouldn't have to re-traumatize ourselves and spread and give oxygen to that fire. We don't have easy answers. But let me offer as a leader some ways forward, because I think that's what we're called to do, not just those of us with titles like mayor, but all of us who are leaders. Whether you're a community leader, a family leader, a faith leader, a law enforcement leader, each one of us need to step up in this moment and to define and find what it means to live in this city of angels, in this country, and indeed in this world. How do we de-normalize hate? Because the more that comes, the more normal it becomes. So let me offer a couple things. One first is our external work. The more we experience, the less we as a society think that anti-Semitism is extraordinary. And we cannot let that happen. That's why gatherings like this, as painful, as repetitive, as re-traumatizing as they are necessary. Let us not stop doing that. We've been consistently doing that from City Hall. We've been doing that with our friends around the country. We've been speaking up and speaking out and inviting others to come in who might not just be ourselves, to hear this, to understand and to learn. Because we know in a moment where there's such an emphasis on things like engineering and STEM and STEAM education, great, we've stopped teaching history and humanities and morals. A civic culture, a place now where we find, just in public comment in our civic spaces, no common ground, no common decency, and we've forgotten how to work together for the common good. So let us reclaim those commons, and a part of reclaiming those commons is speaking out at these moments. So the more we experience, the less we as a society feel that this is extraordinary, and that's dangerous. But then the second work is internal. Because the more we experience, the less individually we feel that this is extraordinary. And that perhaps is even more dangerous. When the recorded tapes of hate by 3 council members and a labor leader came out in this city less than a month ago, and for better or for worse, the Jews were included yet again, a conspiracy about power and redistricting that Jews and African Americans were cutting deals in South LA. From people that I knew and worked alongside and was disgusted to see. I had a friend who said, who wasn't a member of a named group said, why were we left out? Everybody seemed to be included, but from African Americans to indigenous people, gay folks, women, Armenians, Jews. But I was talking to Council Member Mitch O'Farrell, a dear friend of mine who now represents the district I represented for 12 years. And one of the things that I heard him say was, when he was called in those tapes, a gay man, a little bitch, he said, I've become so used to it, God knows I've been called that so much, I don't even notice it anymore. We can't let that happen, where we internalize things so much that when we hear things said about Jews, not that we accept them, but we no longer have an internal reaction or motivated to fight every single time we hear it. And trust me, I know how exhausting this work is. For us as Jews, for Black Americans as Black Americans, for Muslims, to know that there are just tropes and prejudices that people carry around all the time, but if we don't do that work internally, we can't do that work externally. And then there's a second level of internal work that we need to do, which is examining our own hearts. Jews can be anti-Semitic to ourselves. Jews can certainly be prejudiced towards other groups. And the coalitions that we form don't mean that even with strengthened bonds that people don't hold prejudices against us as Jews. And so that's always active work. We as human beings hold hate in our hearts. We might think we don't, but that necessary work of examining and re-examining is a necessary part of us being able to see it when others use that against us. That's tough work to do when you're traumatized too. You kind of feel very righteous. But I would also then take it to the third level, which is then our coalition work. So our external work, our internal work, and our coalition work. We need to now, more than ever before, build our coalitions and re-strengthen them. We need to make sure that our words of hate don't exclude anybody from that, and that we're sensitive to understanding that how we go about talking about anti-Semitism has consequences too. We need to be as welcoming in our definitions. We need to be as broad in our coalitions so that we can make sure that we have everybody with us in the same way we're with everybody else. Of course, we disagree with each other, 3 Jews, 5 congregations, the old joke goes. And we disagree between groups on things like Israel and Palestine. We disagree on sometimes civil rights. We disagree on the pathway. We have Jews that are incredibly diverse on their approaches to the roles of men and women, on sexuality. But this is a moment in which we need to find that common ground in order to be most protected. And I really ask our community to dig deep, to not go towards anything that over-politicizes. And I will say things that maybe others can't. When people seek definitions that would exclude, for instance, the ability for us to talk about the BDS movement as being anti-Semitic sometimes, I say no. And vice versa, if we want to pull in all of Israeli politics and say that any criticism ever of politicians who happen to be Jewish is always anti-Semitic, we also have to say no. And I probably pissed off everybody by saying either one or the other. But I think it's my role to let people know that there is that common ground, and when we're attacked, let's find that common ground and emphasize it. And then later on, we can have the space to disagree about other things. The final thing I'll say, Los Angeles has a special role, I think. We don't think of ourselves as a Jewish city the way that New York does, or Philadelphia, or other places. But Jews have been here since the founding of this city. Certainly as a Spanish city, not during Indian times. Our first nonprofit in this city's history was a Jewish organization. The first chair of the Chamber of Commerce in the 1800s was Jewish. I'm the first elected Jewish mayor, but not the first Jewish mayor, because the head of the city council, when a mayor died in the 1870s, who was Jewish, took office, served for a whole 2 weeks. He did run for office to become mayor, didn't win. Maybe people figured out he was Jewish, but he was Jewish, and a Jewish mayor in the 1870s, Bernard Cohn, preceded me. We have 3 citywide elected officials. All 3 are Jewish at this moment. And that is a privilege, and it comes with a responsibility for us to not only lead and to show what Judaism is about, both our specific history, but also our universal connections. but also to exercise that power and to use the instruments of power, whether that be LAPD stepping up to investigate, and thank you for the work that you are doing, because accountability must be found. People must be found who do these so people can see there are consequences for anti-Semitic or any racist behavior, whether it's attacks against our AAPI community or others who have experienced the same thing. But I hope we as Jews will find again and reestablish what has always made us the strongest, when we can be the conveners and we can feel our pain and share that with ourselves and with others and make sure that Los Angeles truly is a city of angels. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Garcetti. Thank you for your strong words. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you for using your bully pulpit as the mayor of the city with the second largest Jewish population in this country. My name is Jeffrey Abrams, and I'm the Los Angeles Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League. Tonight it's my great privilege to introduce to all of you to our National Director and CEO, Jonathan Greenblatt. Jonathan comes to this work with a very diverse background as a business leader and entrepreneur, having founded and run companies in the consumer products and technology fields, as an academic who has taught and lectured here at UCLA, as well as the University of Pennsylvania at Wharton. Jonathan also is a public servant, having worked in the Obama White House as a special advisor to the president and the director of the Office of Social Innovation, where he helped to create jobs. He's also an author, and earlier this year, somewhat presciently, he authored and released a book called It Could Happen Here: Why America is Tipping from Hate to the Unthinkable and How We Can Stop It. But most of all, Jonathan is a leader who I am very proud to work with, the 6th National Director and CEO of the Anti-Defamation League. Please welcome Jonathan Greenblatt.
Good evening, everyone. So it is really a privilege for me to be here, back home in Los Angeles. This really is my second home. My children were born at St. John's in Santa Monica. I met my wife here. I built my businesses here. And it's a pleasure to be back, and it's a particular privilege to follow Mayor Garcetti, and I am so grateful. The city is grateful. The country is grateful for your inspired leadership. Thank you. And to be here at Federation. So I've just had the privilege of meeting your new CEO, Rabbi Noah Farkas. I believe that federations are arguably the most important organization in our Jewish communities. They are the nervous system for so much that happens. They are unique. No other, if you will, community has the kind of infrastructure that they offer. And they have so much to do, I believe, with our success. So I wish you and your leadership, all the success in the world and the best of luck. And I am so proud that under the leadership of Jeff Abrams, we continue to work closely with Federation here in Los Angeles as we do in cities around the country. I also want to acknowledge the members of law enforcement who are with us today, who play such a pivotal role in ensuring the safety, not just of the Jewish community, but all marginalized communities in the cities in which they serve. Thank you for your service. ADL has worked with law enforcement literally since the 1930s to monitor extremism, to respond to threats. We're the largest trainer of law enforcement in the United States on issues of extremism and hate. We train upwards of 20,000 officers a year, including every new cadet in Quantico, including every new member of the NYPD. And we do this because the police play such a pivotal role in our communities. And I think in this moment for the Jewish community, the priority is crystal clear. So if you're sitting out here today or sitting at this table, Jewish, and feeling like something is different, That's because it is. I don't mean that, if you will, sort of rhetorically. I mean that empirically. In 2021, the ADL tracked 2,717 anti-Semitic incidents. Let me underscore that in almost 45 years of doing this work, last year was the highest number by far. Last year was a 34% increase over 2020. In fact, since the year 2015, anti-Semitic incidents in America have nearly tripled. And I think if I had said to you, if we were sitting here in 2015, November the 3rd, Barack Obama was the president, I think many of us felt like in many respects we were moving toward a stronger liberal democracy. If I had said to you 6 years ago, anti-Semitic incidents would triple, that we'd have Christian nationalists openly running for office, unabashedly, unashamedly, and earning the nomination of their party. If I had said to you, we would have radical anti-Zionists in the well of the House of Representatives, unashamedly, unabashedly, using wild anti-Semitic charges. I think in 2015, if I'd said these things, you would have said, no way. But this speaks to what Mayor Garcetti talked about. And in some ways, it feels like we are frogs in the boiling water. I don't know where we're going to be in 6 years. I truly, deeply mean that. But I will tell you, I'm in Los Angeles today. I was in Chicago on Tuesday. I was in Bridgeport on Sunday. I was in Miami on Thursday. And everywhere I go, the most frequent question that I get, not in the Q&A like this, but afterwards, when people come up to me, do you know what it is? Where should I go? Is it time? Do you think I should be thinking about a plan B? This is the question that I get in Miami and Bridgeport, in Chicago, likely here in Los Angeles. So something has changed. So the question becomes, what do we do about it? Well, at ADL, I think it means we have got to be vigilant, more vigilant than ever before. I believe we'll only have real safety with a mix of two things: security and solidarity. For me, security means making sure that, again, our institutions are well protected. Yes, that means the physical security, because the attacks are real. This afternoon, my staff in New York spent their day, the afternoon, working with the FBI to respond to an imminent attack on a synagogue in New Jersey. That was reported a few hours ago. It's real. We need to be secure from a cyber perspective. Why am I meeting with Elon Musk? Why am I holding Mark Zuckerberg to account? Because social media has been a super spreader of anti-Semitism and all forms of intolerance. Because the gaming industry is more dangerous than you can imagine. And because this tearing away of it is right upon us in ways no one ever could have imagined. And finally, why am I so engaged in the court of public opinion? Speaking out again, whether it's entertainers or athletes, as the mayor talked about. It's because these influencers, at a time when cynicism is so high in politics and in business, these influencers are shaping the minds and the lives of our kids. Whether it's happening again in the entertainment world, whether it's happening on the playing field, whether it's happening on a college campus, we are vigilant about this because we have no choice. So we need security. And finally, in terms of security, we will be relentless in terms of our advocacy, pushing for laws in Sacramento. And I would credit Representative Gabriel for the new Social Media Transparency Act. We were proud to be a part of that. Very important. But advocacy is essential, whether it's Sacramento or Washington, D.C., or whether it's trying to bankrupt the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers as we're doing right now. If our litigation is successful, we will grind them into the dust where they belong. But we will never truly have safety without security and solidarity. We cannot do this alone. Often I hear people say to me, why is the ADL so focused not just on fighting anti-Semitism, but all forms of hate? Why do you spend so much time speaking out against other offenses? It's because as a Jewish community, we know the limits of what we can achieve alone. But as that African proverb goes, we can go far alone or we can go farther. We can go fast alone or we can go farther together. And we have seen time and again, as the mayor laid out, that while anti-Semitism is corrosive to democracy, it is also the canary in the coal mine, a harbinger of even worse forms of hate. And so I stand side by side with my African American brothers and sisters, my Latino brothers and sisters, with my AAPI brothers and sisters, my Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Christian, and those of no faith, and with the Jews of color who intersect all these communities, because we have to be in this together. And the last thing I'll say is ultimately, we've got to fight hate, but the only way we really win is if we foster hope. And solidarity allows us to do that. Working with children, working with partners, engaging in education. Hate alone is a fight you can't win, but with hope, anything is possible. So the theme of this afternoon and this evening is together. Again, I will end where I began, how proud I am and how privileged I am for the partnership between ADL Los Angeles and the Jewish Federation of Los Angeles. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you again to those who serve and protect us, and thanks to all of you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for traveling from New York. A vivid display of the importance of this community, both to the members of this community, but to our nation. Thank you for being here. As Jonathan said, security and solidarity. And that's reflected in this very evening, vividly. Our work together with the city, our work together with law enforcement, and as Jonathan mentioned, an unparalleled partnership between ADL and the Jewish Federation. We cannot be safe without this partnership, and I'm proud to be in deep partnership with the entire Federation led by Rabbi Farkas. I'm now honored to introduce one of the critical members of the team here at the Federation, Ivan Wolkind, a longtime friend of mine and a former neighbor. Ivan is the Federation's COO and Community Security Initiative expert, who will walk us through how we work together seamlessly to ensure the utmost security of our community. Ivan's experience as an LAPD reserve officer and a National InfraGard board member, a group of concerned citizens supporting the FBI's work. And Ivan's extensive knowledge of the security arena are instrumental in guiding the Community Security Initiative and the CSI team here at the Federation. Please welcome Ivan Wolkind.
Many thanks, Jeff, for that introduction, and to all of the speakers here, and also to everyone at home and here for being here. We here at the Federation are truly blessed to work so closely with our partners at ADL, both locally and nationally, and also to have such strong relationships with both local and national law enforcement. Of course, one of the most unsettling aspects of the current climate of anti-Semitism nationally and here in Los Angeles is the fear that someone, somewhere, is being inspired by this hate speech and these hate incidents to escalate to the next level of physical violence against our community. Each of us, all the players who are presenting here today, have a very specific and well-defined role to play in keeping our community safe. And I want to spend a few minutes here talking about the Federation's Community Security Initiative, CSI. This week is actually a special week for CSI because we have our 10th anniversary. This week it was founded 10 years ago. So we have a wonderful, wonderful staff who work on that, some of whom are here tonight. And we founded CSI with a very practical and hands-on mission. On a day-to-day basis, our mission is to increase the security stance of our Jewish community. Our philosophy is that, of course, our community needs to work with law enforcement and other experts and partners, but that ultimately, we, the Jewish community, must be responsible for our own security. The better we all do our jobs as Jews and as Jewish communal professionals, the more often large groups of Jews will congregate at known times and known locations. Of course, the best way to look at that is that this is a large and vibrant and growing Jewish community, and that's a wonderful thing. From a security point of view, the other way of looking at that is these are large and well-visible targets. And our job at CSI and our job as a community, each and every one of us, the Jewish community and our allies, is to educate ourselves on how we can continue to be an active and open community whilst also understanding that we must do everything that we can to ensure that we are being sensible and we are keeping ourselves safe. CSI has, over the past 10 years, trained thousands of Jewish communal professionals, people who work in our schools and places of worship, to be responsible for the safety of students and congregants in those institutions. We train professionals on situational awareness, on how to tell if your building is under surveillance, how to notice what could possibly be a potential pre-incident indicator of trouble. And if you do see something, we train people on how to report it and what to do with that information. We've carried out detailed and lengthy security site visits and assessments at the 550 Jewish sites with whom we work, and we've made suggestions on how to improve security and safety, not just through increasing hard assets and spending money on buildings, but also through improvements of procedures and policies. In addition, we have a fully staffed fusion center which collects and disseminates security information to community leaders 24/7. We have a proprietary database that allows us to send security alerts to our partner organizations based on severity of incident and geography. For example, if there is an armed hostage taker in a standoff with police, we can send an alert to all Jewish nonprofit sites within a 5-mile radius. If there's a suspicious package on a street corner, we may restrict that to a 2-mile radius. If you, listening at home or here in the building, are a member of a Jewish community organization, please ask the leadership if they have an emergency plan in place. Make sure that they and the staff have trained on that emergency plan and know what to do in the case of an emergency. Ask if they've reached out to our CSI Community Security Initiative and ask them to do so on a regular basis. Please take responsibility personally for the safety of yourselves, your family, and our community. In a few minutes, we're going to be sharing slides, and we'll be sending out afterwards slides which gives you information on how to report something that you find suspicious. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our partner, my friend and partner, in everything that we do with our community security, Deputy Chief Blake Chow from LAPD's West LA Division. Thank you, sir.
Well, good evening, everybody. Mr. Mayor, thank you to our friends at the Federation as well as the ADL. We are always here by your side, as we said, for many years, and we have some great relationships. And to the community members that showed up, Chief Moore is unfortunately traveling on city business, but he sends his regrets. You know, I wanted to touch on something that everybody has really said. I want to give kind of a local perspective from a law enforcement perspective on this scourge that we're seeing here in society right now, and how appropriate really that we're here to fight this together, because that's really what it's going to take as a society. We need to fight this together, because, and we've done this in the past in this country, where we've come together as a country and we've overcome evil, we've overcome groups that espouse hate, and we can do the same thing again if we just come together and reach out to our communities and we mobilize and we educate, and some things that I'm going to talk about. But unfortunately, today we are probably in one of the most divided times in society that I have probably ever seen on my time on this earth. And a lot of it has to do with the political climate that we've come out of. A lot of it has to do with the internet. The internet has been a blessing and a curse for many of us. But now we have a situation where these individuals that espouse hate are able to get together without ever really having to come in contact with one another, and they gather together and they talk about misinformation, and they get spun up. And now I think what we're seeing is sort of the results of probably several years of this kind of bubbling up. And I just want to give you some statistics very quickly on hate crimes and hate incidents here in Los Angeles. And I will preface this by saying we are severely underreported on all hate incidents, including anti-Semitic. So for this year so far, we've recorded 59 hate incidents. 27 of those have been on the west side of Los Angeles, in Wilshire and also in West LA. Hate crimes, we've recorded 71 anti-Semitic hate crimes this year so far. 38 of them have been on the west side of the city. So you can see we have our work cut out for us. We have hate groups that are targeting residents that live in the West LA division. We have hate groups that are targeting individuals that live in the Fairfax. We have hate groups that are targeting Jewish businesses here on the west side of the city. So what do we do about that? First of all, number one, we've got to go back in our communities, and we have to report. We've got to report when we see hate incidents. We have to report when we see hate crimes. And I know if you look at the numbers I just gave you, we have a city of 4 million people. How is it possible we can only be recording 59 hate crimes or hate incidents? We are severely underreported. So we need to go back out, and we need to tell people, if you see something, say something. Call 911. You can call 211 or 311 and report it, because we need to record this, because we've got to know what's happening in our communities. Sometimes hate incidents are things that we record that go up right up to that level of the First Amendment, because these groups know where the line is. But we need to know about them, because when a hate crime is committed, we can use the documentation of hate incidents to hold people accountable and file hate crime enhancements with the district attorney's office. I have an expert back here, Detective Orlando Martinez from Robbery Homicide. Orlando, please raise your hand. He is the department's hate crime coordinator. So if anybody has any questions about statistics and reporting, this is the man here. Number two, we need to educate our community. We really need to get out there. We need to get into our schools. We need to educate the community, because a lot of this hate starts at the home. And we need to counter what some people what some parents are telling their kids. Here in Operations West Bureau, which is basically, I'm in charge of the west side of the city. Somebody here said, "Oh, just the west side?" I said, "Yeah, just the west side." We've organized 2 Jewish community symposiums and forums every year. And when Ivan reached out to me and Ariella reached out to me, and they said, we actually had one planned for Tuesday. They said, "Would you like to combine it?" I said, "Absolutely. This is an important topic." But we've also got programs that we're working with the ADL on, where We call it the Jewish experience. We're taking our brand new officers that are being assigned to West LA and Wilshire and some of the other parts of the Bureau, and we're having community members educate them on politics, on history, on customs, so that when they go out in the field, they've got more tools to deal with the Jewish community. But when we come across these incidents, they'll understand the importance of why we need to work with that individual and why we need to record these things. We need to do more outreach, not only things like this, but we need to do more outreach as a community. And if you are members of groups that can do outreach, that's really important, so we can get more people motivated. Enforcement and accountability is strictly important. The officers along the back, which I'll introduce in a minute, along the back wall, all have officers working for them that investigate hate crimes and will hold people accountable, and we can identify suspects. But beyond that, we've done footbeats on Pico Boulevard during High Holy Days. We've done footbeats on Melrose along with the reserve officers, so that we're out there in high visibility when the community is moving around, just to make sure, number one, they feel safe, but number two, if someone's coming into this community and wants to do harm to somebody because they see them walking down the street, then that's not going to happen. That's not happening on our watch. And number 5 is intelligence. We need people to provide us information. We work with Ivan quite a lot on intelligence, because that's the only way we're going to be able to identify people that we think are out in the community. Really, quite frankly, you know, I know it's a tough pill to swallow when you tell people, well, that's protected by First Amendment, but the fact of the matter is they're terrorizing communities. That's why we need to know who they are. So your law enforcement partnership between the individual and the Jewish community goes back, it's very, very deep, goes back very far. I'm actually excited to say I'm going to make my second trip to Israel in December. And thank you. Those trips have been so eye-opening for me that I think they really, in my first trip, it painted a whole picture of a country that I really didn't know. And it was such a beautiful country and such beautiful people that when the chief asked me if I wanted to go a second time, I said, yeah, tell me when. So I'll be going in December, but I wanted to introduce the captains out here to you, so that if some of the community members want to speak with them after this is over. First on the left is Commander Jonathan Pinto. He is my Assistant Commanding Officer at Operations West Bureau. I have Captain Sonia Monaco in charge of Wilshire Division. She has the Fairfax area. Captain Steve Embrick in charge of Venice and Pacific area. Commander Jonathan Tom, who some of you may know, just newly promoted. John, congratulations. He is my second Assistant Commanding Officer, Operations West Bureau. I have Captain Aaron Ponce in charge of Olympic Division, which is primarily Koreatown. And I saw Captain Craig Heredia here somewhere. Oh, there you are. He is in charge of now newly promoted West Los Angeles Division. I'm going to bring Craig up here to kind of discuss very, very quickly, I know your time is valuable, about the flyers that we've been finding in the residential areas. But before I do that, I wanted to just very touch on the threat that we picked up in New Jersey. So we've had major crimes kind of vet that out. There was no connection to Los Angeles, Southern California at this point. But what we've done is we've put out a message to all the captains. We're doing extra patrols at our synagogues, but also all of the other Jewish facilities that are in our area. Again, creating that element of safety, as well as making sure the community's safe from anything that somebody might think they want to do as a copycat or otherwise. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Captain Heredia, who will kind of discuss what's been going on in West Los Angeles.
Good evening. It's a privilege to be here. I've been working in West LA since the beginning of this year, and I just really value the partnership between the community that we're serving and law enforcement, and the mutual respect that we have. It's been a fantastic experience, and I'm really privileged to be here. I just wanted to reiterate a couple things on the hate incidents and hate crimes, how we continue to investigate those with a sense of urgency and purpose. We go out and we canvass for video evidence, look for footage from Ring cameras and things like that, so we can connect the dots to find out who is disseminating these items of hate. We move on those hate incidents the same way we do with a hate crime, and we get that information documented. Something that the chief asked me to speak about is something that we experienced just recently during the third week of October. And we had several communities that have significant Jewish population, Holmby Hills, Pico Robertson area, where people woke up in the morning and found hate speech in the form of flyers in Ziploc bags that had either sand or rice in them. And these hate groups are delivering these in specific communities to spread their vile and disgusting speech. And we are collecting those items as evidence. We are booking them and photographing them. And again, moving with a sense of urgency to find out who is delivering these. And we have been able to, on some occasions, identify vehicles and gather that intelligence that may prove useful down the road in another criminal investigation. And I think that the way that we have been able to investigate has been fantastic. And we also, anytime we have a hate incident or a hate crime, we communicate with our Jewish community stakeholders group. We're in constant communication with the Federation and ADL and sharing that information so that we can communicate with the public to let them know what's going on and that we are aware and we are doing something about it. So there is no incident that is too small that should not be reported. And I hope that everybody that's not in this room, obviously if you're in this room, you're hearing it, but if you're not here, I hope that you hear the message that we want you to report these things. It's important for us to get this information. And I'm going to use a quote that I stole from somebody, and I don't know who, but it resonated, and it goes to what Mayor Garcetti said earlier about unity, and it goes to what Jonathan said about solidarity earlier. The messages are very consistent, and it's courage encourages courage, right? Sometimes it takes one person to step up and do what's right, and that will encourage the next person to do it. And next thing you know, courage encourages courage, and we have solidarity. We have united group that is going to fight this fight. All right. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
What a beautiful segue to our next speaker. Joumana Silyan-Saba is the Director of Policy and Enforcement for the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department, LA Civil Rights. With a sense of optimism, Joumana is committed to diplomacy, inclusion, and bringing about social change to expand equity and inclusion. In her role at LA Civil Rights, Joumana is our partner, and we are pleased she is joining us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you, Becky, for your kind introduction. Thank you to the Jewish Federation, ADL, and everybody that worked so hard to put this important forum tonight. It is truly unfortunate that we are here yet once again to speak out against anti-Semitism. Just last month, I was at the Eradicate Hate conference in Pittsburgh, and there I met one of the victims who lost her brother at the Tree of Life attack. As she shared her pain, I felt a personal connection. We were no longer strangers. A few weeks later, as I came back to LA, it was gut-wrenching to see the banner and the hateful language off of the 405 in the heart of our city, in neighborhoods where majority of the Jewish families live. The thought of threatening leaflets being left on front yards was particularly terrifying. It is a violation of one's own home, the one place where we all feel safe. As someone of Armenian ancestry, I know far too well that the seeds of hate can lead to unspeakable atrocities. My grandfather escaped with his mother, and they lived as refugees in Syria, where I grew up. Much of the rest of the family was killed or forced to leave their homes to escape the horror. Unfortunately, my family's story is not unique. We don't have to look far back into history to recognize the dangerous narratives that othered entire Jewish communities, leading to the atrocities of the Holocaust. Yet, this is where we are today. We all shoulder a collective responsibility to ensure that history does not repeat itself. But we must go further to root out hate anywhere it appears. Hateful acts targeting Jewish communities or any other group on the basis of religion, race, ethnicity, or gender is unacceptable and rejected by all of us. Our city is one of the most religiously diverse in the world. We are home to the largest diaspora communities outside their native countries anywhere in the world. No matter our religious or political differences, fundamentally, we all stand for the sacredness of the humanity that bonds us together. This is what we are about. Here in LA, time and time again, we stood together as Jews, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs. Today, we stand strong with our Jewish brothers and sisters against anti-Semitism. And we stand united under the banner of an LA for all and against all forms of hate and violent threats that target anyone in our city. We know that often hate goes unreported, and we just heard it from Deputy Chief Chow. We know that the data we are looking at does not even begin to paint the real picture. This is why we at the city have expanded an LA for All campaign, which is available in 18 languages, including Hebrew, to encourage reporting and to assist victims in connecting with social services. Anyone who is subjected to hate can report directly to LAPD or call 311 and seek additional support. At LA Civil Rights, we are committed to fighting hate and discrimination through education, awareness, and enforcement. And under the leadership of Mayor Eric Garcetti, we just launched our Discrimination Enforcement Division. We, under the Civil Human Rights Discrimination Enforcement, have the authority to investigate discrimination in the private sector and to enforce the city's human and civil rights law that was enacted in 2019. Anyone who's been subjected to discriminatory practices in the private sector, in commerce, education, employment, and housing, on the basis of protected class, can file a complaint with our department at civilandhumanrights.lacity.org. Those who violate civil rights will be forced to pay penalties of up to $250,000. And anyone that obstructs the enforcement process can be prosecuted with a misdemeanor charge. We recognize that more needs to be done to fight anti-Semitism and all forms of extremism. More resources must be allocated to scale up education, prevention, and intervention work. More must be done to hold social media companies accountable and to expand, to expand narratives of unity instead of narratives of fear, and more dialogue and ongoing intergroup engagement efforts. Together, we can truly realize an LA for all and ensure that seeds of anti-Semitism and hate have no place to grow here or anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Joumana, and thank you to all of our panelists. We have learned and heard from some of the best authorities on security in our city, in our country, I might add, and experts in fighting anti-Semitism. Yet we know many of you have want to know the specifics. So there are 2 slides that you will see, the 1,200 of you or so who are out there. And to those of you who are in the room, all of this will be sent to you. The specifics are important. Generalities will not get us there. So we really encourage you, if you see a hate crime or hate incident, if you feel you're in danger or the victim of a crime, there's that 911 number, or contact law enforcement. If your Jewish institutions have been targeted, contact the Jewish Federation's Community Security Initiative. They are marvelous, and they have 10 years of experience under their belt at this point, securing 500 plus of our Jewish institutions. If you feel like you were targeted because you are Jewish or perceived to be Jewish, report this to the ADL, and any other resources that were announced tonight will also be sent to you after this webinar. We thank you. We thank our panelists. And for those of you that are in the room, you probably have additional questions, and we can kind of carry on as we say goodbye to those who are online. Thank you. Live.